The Ten Commandments are probably one of my all-time favorite villain groups in all of anime and manga, and throughout the course of the series, the build-up to these characters, and even how they were utilized and shown in the Seven Deadly Sins, has honestly been one of the best experiences ever, and they kind of lived up to the hype as they existed throughout the entirety of the series. And then in Four Knights of the Apocalypse, two of them got revived with a bit of a power-up, but were defeated by the current protagonists of that story. So the thought came to mind, what if I pit the Ten Commandments against the Four Knights of the Apocalypse? But that video would have ended up being probably an hour long. So I decided to only pit them against one other character, and it's a character that I think all of you really like, and that is Tristan. This is the child of Meliodas and Elizabeth. As honestly, I do kind of think Tristan would be enough to wipe out a good chunk of the Ten Commandments, and I'll go over each and every one of them throughout this video. But I'm not going to go super in depth, as that would end up making this video roughly an hour long. So I'm just going to be a bit general and give my thoughts throughout everyone's different abilities on why Tristan would come out on top, or how these specific characters could actually get one over on Tristan or give them a hard time. This is my first ever versus video, and obviously instead of choosing a one-on-one, I end up doing 10 against 1, so this is going to be a very awkward video to an extent. So I'm going to try my best to make this as coherent as possible. Now first off, I'm just going to put these two together right away because we've seen them already, and that is Galen and Melascula. Now Galen and Melascula fighting against each of their own representative opponents in Four Knights, they got a power-up of chaos magic, and they were a lot stronger. I don't really know how to gauge them, but the fact that Tristan more or less effortlessly managed to hold off and even beat Melascula one-on-one, Galen was taken down and injured a lot by Gawain on her own, but then Percival just blew him up with his power and instantly killing him. So even with the commandments that they have, and they didn't have their commandments when they were revived, their own individual abilities wouldn't have been enough to take down Tristan. As Galen's commandment is truth, which basically anybody that tells a lie in his presence will be instantly turned to stone. It works on Galen too if he breaks his promise and stuff like that, or even lies himself. So yeah, Tristan never really tells any real lies, so I don't think the commandment of truth would actually work on him. So there's no real way Galen actually does anything to Tristan at all. Melascula's powers are pretty interesting, but seeing as how most of it is either her giant snake form, a spell to release the dead, and also her Cocoon of Darkness, which has various alterations in order to imprison somebody, but Tristan basically slashed out of one of them imbued with chaos, so that doesn't really do anything against him. Melascula's Commandment of Faith basically makes it that anybody that loses faith in her presence basically lose their eyesight. Tristan is probably the most faithful character in the series, so yeah, that ain't working against him. So Melascula, her powers ain't doing anything. That's just a given at this point. Next up, let's go to the bum of the Ten Commandments, which is Fraudrin. No getting over this. Fraudrin gets curb stomped by Tristan. He doesn't even have a commandment in the series, so all he has is his full-on size to increase his power and abilities, but Meliodas one-shot him, and that version of Meliodas is more or less, I would say, weaker than current Tristan. Tristan, I'd say, would be on par with Meliodas right before he awakens Assault Mode again in Season 3 of the anime, and then joins the demon side. So I'd say that's where Tristan is at in base. So Fraudrin ain't doing anything. Even self-destruct, I think Tristan could use his arc to kind of contain him in that and not do much. But let's say he had the commandment of selflessness as a hypothetical. This ability makes it so that anybody that has thoughts, holds desires for another person, will end up losing their memories, emotions, and sense of self. That in and of itself could actually affect Tristan, but since Fraudrin does not have this commandment, we don't have to worry about it. But if he did, all Fraudrin would really have to do was to threaten someone he loved like Isolde, and perhaps he wouldn't just lose his sense of self. That's all I really got to say on the matter. Fraudrin is just literally the clown of that whole group. That one commandment is actually a very big weakness for Tristan, as he does care for people in general. So hypothetically that could actually work against him. But Tristan, I still say, would speed blitz Fraudrin regardless before he could do anything. So there's no real way to think that Fraudrin could do anything against Tristan. Next up is Grey Road. Probably one of the physically weakest members of the commandments, save for Melascula, but she is interesting to say the least. She can basically spawn red and grey demons. She can spawn fodder for her, and even make other people become, those other demons. and even envelops a curse that inflicts her targets with all kinds of elements to just defeat them without resorting to violence. Otherwise, her commandment would kill her, and we'll get into her commandment in a second. She can also shapeshift, which is not too big of a deal, but she could also split herself up to escape. So if Tristan has her on the ropes, or if it's an unwinnable situation, she would try and separate herself and flee. Merlin basically stopped this with her own endless whirl ability to basically trap Grey Road in a bottle. So Tristan could probably do something to contain Grey Road, similar to the hypothetical of him containing Frowdrin if he tried to blow himself up. The commandment of pacifism is honestly a pretty interesting ability and could do actual damage and actually potentially beat Tristan. Which, in essence, anybody that kills or performs the act of murder in front of the user of this ability will have their time stolen and they'll rapidly age until they die. Now, if Tristan would end up killing the fodder demons in front of Grey Road, then yeah, Tristan would most likely age rapidly, though there's no instance of whether or not he'll age like a human, and so he'll end up an old man within seconds, or if he'll age like Meliodas, a demon, and he'd go through thousands of years without changing too much, and then dying on the spots. I honestly don't know. So all Tristan would really have to do is try and defeat Grey Road, and there's still there isn't any confirmation that if you kill the wielder of that one commandment, if that person would be affected by that commandment if they killed the user of that commandment. I don't know. Let's just say it just doesn't work if you kill the wielder of that power. Tristan would have to speed blitz again on Grey Road. I do think Grey Road just gets curve stomped similar to Frowdrin. She doesn't have any real feats besides, her commandment and everything. So yeah, Tristan beats Grey Road, no questions asked. She might give a little bit of trouble with the splitting up and the elements thing because he cannot heal ailments, but there's no clear indication that those would work on him, due to the fact that he is half demon and half goddess. It's very possible the illness won't work on him, or at least have a lessened effect. Moving on to Moonspeed, one of everyone's favorite characters, and his abilities. Tristan is a hard counter to his abilities, pun very much intended since he knows full counter, and he's Meliodas' son. Because basically almost all of Moonspeed's attacks are ranged magical attacks. And all Tristan would have to do is use full counter on these attacks and bounce them back with double the force to just wipe out Moonspeed. And literally all of his attacks are ranged attacks, or even if they're up close, if Tristan knows counter vanish, he can just negate that ability once and for all. There's not too much to do with it. And then there's Moonspeed's commandment, which is the commandment of reticence, which is probably the most useless one against Tristan, because this commandment states that those who expressed hidden feelings or emotions would have their voices blocked. So if Tristan tried to hide his emotions, he would lose his voice. Honestly, if it's against a magic user that needs to cast spells, that works perfectly if we're trying to call for help or whatever, because literally in that instance when you're trying to call for help, you will express emotion. Tristan, even though he won't be able to speak, he could still beat Frowdrin in sheer strength alone, and just use his demon powers, because those don't really require an incantation, or even his goddess powers. He doesn't really need to call out the attack names from what I can tell. He can just use them right off the bat. So Moonspeed gets taken out fairly easily by Tristan, so there's no real way for Tristan to win against this. Moving on to everyone's favorite commandment, or one of everyone's favorite commandments once more, is Derriere. Now, Derriere I think has a better shot at fighting Tristan than Moonspeed, but Tristan still beats her, and here's the thing. Her one ability that we've seen throughout the series is the ability of Combo Star. If she manages to land a physical punch or kick or whatever against her opponents, they will then begin to multiply and add an additional 200,000 pounds to the force of that impact, continuously stacking on top of each other with each and every blow that gets a hit in. But if it's blocked or if it misses, she would have to restart from the beginning. And here's the thing, if Tristan gets blindsided and she attacks him clearly, then she could probably land a couple of blows, but Tristan would end up having to either block one punch or evade it in order for it to restart, and he would end up having the upper hand for the rest of the fight, because he would be probably faster than Derriere, and he has a lot of different magical attacks that he can use that are distance based, so he could avoid close quarters combat with Derriere. So in close quarters combat, Derriere would most likely have the upper hand, but Tristan, in terms of his magic power, he would be able to use his abilities to attack Derriere at a different range. Her commandment of purity is literally just anybody who commits impure deeds in her presence will be inflicted with an illness. This is also useless against Tristan because I don't think he would do anything like, people would consider like impure. He's literally I believe that's literally the opposite of Tristan at this point in his character, so that's honestly kind of funny if I'm being honest. But yeah, her commandment won't do anything against Tristan, so as much as I hate to say it, Derriere would also get curb stomped by Tristan for the most part. If Tristan does stick with just the ranged attacks, Combo Star is a big threat, but as Meliodas, who is weak, who in a weakened state, managed to just endlessly just block and evade all of Derriere's Condless combination attacks, so Tristan would most likely do the same. Moving on, let's go to Droll, the giant who became a member of the Ten Commandments and was given a commandment by the Demon King. So let's just be frank. Droll, I think, has a decent chance to potentially push Tristan to the edge, and let me explain why. For one, he's insanely strong and has the powers of all giants in terms to manipulate the earth. And he can even do some ranged attacks with these by, let's just say he has a bunch of different attacks similar to the end, like Ground Gladius, Mother Catastrophe, Rush Rocks, etc. Let's say he does all these different earth manipulating abilities as well, and even create like dolls made of earth to fight Tristan off and wear him down. He'd be able to endlessly attack him, and he'd be able to use his Droll's Dance to increase his own power by connecting himself to the earth, seemingly endlessly increasing his power if he keeps dancing. Granted, he has to stop dancing to use his abilities, but he could like hold Tristan off for a second, dance again, increase, attack Tristan, rinse, repeat until Tristan gets close enough to actually cause him to stop. Droll's strong, but Meliodas in a weaker state was still able to speed blitz him. Granted, that was by surprise, and he never let up on that, and Meliodas was fighting Gloxinia at the same time. There's also the fact that he has the Magic Eye, which allows him to determine a person's strength just by looking at them and even read their minds at a glance. So he'd be able to predict Tristan's next movements and plan accordingly in order to, well, keep him from actually getting up close and personal, which could honestly work a lot better in these instances if he manages to keep using those earth-based spells to just keep Tristan at a far distance and wear him down, which ends up coming into his commandment, the commandment of patience. This ability, anybody that shows an intolerance to pain in his presence will be inflicted with even further pain. So if Tristan ends up showing any form of pain, like he actually feels the pain that it shows on him, that pain will be multiplied by an unknown amount, and it'll continue to stack the more Tristan gets hurt. So using that along with a long distance strategy with a bunch of different attacks that Tristan might not be able to block all of them, it'll stack and he could potentially fall unconscious from the shock. And if Droll has good timing, he'd be able to beat Tristan right then and there. But we also have to take into account Tristan's demon blood, because this is all just base Tristan using his goddess powers. If Droll pushes Tristan to the brink, his demon blood will end up starting to overtake him and he'll enter his demon mark state. Tristan can enter it at a whim, but only for a short period of time before he starts to kind of go berserk and starts to go in actual more pain from his own power. So Tristan, once he enters his demon form, he was able to take out a combination of Galen and Melascula with chaos powers. Unless they fusing multiply their powers by each other, Tristan still effortlessly beat that character. So going up close and personal to Droll in that instance, Tristan would win with his demon mark. And I'll be honest, in every single instance up until now, I haven't even mentioned the demon mark form. Literally all that is just base Tristan as he is without using his demon mark. So yeah, that's just something to think about right now. But yeah, Droll has a good chance of beating him based off of certain circumstances if it works out in his favor, but Tristan would most likely still be able to beat him. Next up is Gloxinia, the first Fairy King who ended up becoming a member of the Ten Commandments. Now, with Gloxinia, I think same thing could be said that I said with Droll with him, just maybe a bit better, because while he could also read minds, Gloxinia could also fly. So he can fly very fast, and he's also got his Spirit Spear, Basquias, which has confirmed to have 10 forms, but we only see 6 of them in the entire series. Whether it'll get expanded upon, I have no idea. So let's just go over these real quick, and then I'll say how Tristan stacks up. The first form is just Basgas. It's just a giant spear that can be used and is capable of firing a powerful beam. Nothing that Tristan won't be able to just avoid. He can actually avoid it. It's a big ass target. It'd be relatively easy to avoid for him. Second form is Guardian, which is a giant hornet insect, which is very fast, but it also has this thing called necrosis, where if the target is stung, it gets paralyzed. So if Tristan outspeeds this thing, then there's no issue, but this thing is very fast. Next up is the fifth form, which is Yggdra armor, literally just meaning tree armor. The Basgas just wraps itself into a form of armor for Gloxinia with large sharp claws equipped, most likely increasing his speed and defensive and offensive capabilities for close quarters combat. I think that would be interesting to see, but I don't think Gloxinia would risk close quarters combat with Tristan, because Tristan is a skilled swordsman, and a dual wielder at that. There's the seventh form, Moonrose, which is a giant rose based off of the spear, and it has the ability of the Droplet of Life, which can be used to heal wounds completely, even if you're very close to death. But it can't be used multiple times in a row, and once it's used once, it can't be used for a little while. It's not specified how many times it can be used, but I'd have to say maybe a couple of days or so. So let's say Tristan deals damage to Gloxinia, he could heal himself once and get back into the fight, while Tristan will be wearing himself out. The ninth form is Deaththorn, which is just vines that Gloxinia uses to just wrap around his opponents. Nothing too complex. And the final one we know of is the 10th form, Emerald Octo, which is honestly just the form that we see when Gloxinia is released from the Conflict of Eternal Darkness as he is wrapped in it. So it's literally just an octopus-like tentacle thorns that he uses to attack people, and he can extend it through multiple areas. Now, if we take all these things into account, along with Gloxinia's mind reading, then I actually think he has a very good chance of beating Tristan, because having him fight himself, along with using Form 2 with its incredible speed and its neurotoxins, Tristan would definitely wear himself out a lot and might even get stung at one time, and he'll be rightfully paralyzed for a little bit, and he can't heal illnesses, so a poison like this most likely won't be healed that easily. Which honestly, I have to say, this would give Tristan the most problems, because in terms of being able to read minds, we've seen it from Lancelot that it can be used to avoid people's attacks, and this is a one-on-one fight, mind you. Tristan would have a tough time, because Gloxinia would have to avoid attacks from Tristan while using his Spirit Spear to attack. And all that comes into culmination with his commandment, which is the Commandment of Repose, which states that anybody who fights without rest in his presence will have their magic sealed away. So with all the situations, Tristan fighting nonstop against Gloxinia, he will get tired out. Tristan does have a good amount of stamina, but even still, Gloxinia could avoid Tristan's attacks just by reading his mind and using his Spirit Sphere's multiple different configurations to wear him down or hold him off, causing him to use more and more of his stamina. Tristan would end up falling victim to this commandment and have his magical power sealed off completely. But his demon mark could still manifest and increase his physical strength by practically double. And I don't think his wings are magic based, so if he uses his demon wings, then he will most likely still be able to fight Gloxinia. And since Gloxinia healed himself initially beforehand, if we go by that logic, Tristan could still wear him down and beat him. Again, this all really depends on the specific situation. The biggest threat is Gloxinia's Spirit Spear. If Tristan can deal with that or damage it in a certain way, then he wins. He will be able to beat Gloxinia in no time, because that is really the only way Gloxinia can fight. He has no physical magic, no physical strength to back him up in a fight against Tristan, so it all just comes down to Tristan getting his powers. And even if he has his demon mark, it'll double his physical strength, and that's basically what we see with Meliodas. If his physical strength is doubled, then I do see Tristan beating Gloxinia. And let's say in the middle of the fight, before the commandments end up taking shape, the demon mark will appear, Tristan will get a one-track mind and just make a beeline straight for Gloxinia, beating him instantly. This will be the toughest fight out of the list. Droll was pretty good, but Gloxinia I think will be the toughest fight at this point in the list for Tristan, as everything kind of seems to be stacked against him. with how varied Luxinia's fighting style can be. But we still got 2 more commandments on this list, so let's just keep going. Next, let's just go ahead and talk about the leader of this group of the 10 commandments, and Tristan's uncle, Zeldris. I was going to put him last, but Estarossa I'm saving him for last due to obvious reasons. So let's go with Zeldris' abilities. Ominous Nebula, he creates a powerful vortex that sucks in all living things around him, allowing him to slice them up with godlike speed. This was able to injure Escanor, and it took Escanor in the one state to actually break through this and injure Zeldris, and this was the point where he was given a bit of the Demon King's power. So this Tristan would definitely have a lot of trouble with, and I don't think he'd be as fast with a sword as Zeldris is with this technique. But there's always a possibility of him getting lucky with the Demon Mark, but I still think in terms of pure technique, Zeldris would most likely have Tristan beat. But then we have the abilities that were given to Zeldris by the Demon King, called God or just Demon King. This one allows Zeldris to completely nullify all magical attacks. So the magical attacks won't work against Zeldris, so Tristan would have to rely purely on physical strength. He can still use enchantments on his swords, but it would all come down to physical strength. Zeldris could use stuff like Hellblaze that he could launch at Tristan, but Tristan could use full counter against it to fling it back at Zeldris with double the strength, and Zeldris wouldn't be dumb enough to do that unless he knows for sure that Tristan won't be able to block it. There's Disarray, which Zeldris just summons a portal over his desired target and releases a massive lightning bolt just to strike them down. That's it, just basically creates a lightning bolt. Now let's talk about his commandment, called the Commandment of Piety. Basically, any who turn their back to Zeldris are treated as committing an act of treachery and are cursed into serving the Demon King, and by extension, Zeldris himself, who is basically acting as the Demon King's representative. Now Tristan would not be affected by this due to the sheer fact that he'll just face Zeldris straight on. He won't back down, as we saw when he tried to continuously fight Arthur when he appeared. Granted, he was kind of succumbing to his demon blood at the time, but I still feel like he would still fight Zeldris head on. Zeldris, I think, in terms of sheer technique, would probably beat Tristan, and strategic wise, he would beat Tristan. Demon Mark Tristan would most likely do very well against Zeldris in terms of just sheer physical strength and speed, but again, it would almost likely come down to just sheer technique, and I honestly believe that Zeldris, based on what we've seen so far, would do very well against Tristan and might actually come out on top. Tristan's very strong, but I don't think he's at the level of Zeldris and Meliodas, as from the end of the 7 Deadly Sins, and even right now in Fortnite the Apocalypse, Meliodas was able to fight off a literal deity, and Tristan with Demon Mark was just one-shotted by Arthur to a degree. He wasn't knocked unconscious, but he was just flicked away like a fly. So we can honestly think that Zeldris at that point, at the point of Cursed by Light, could still do very much the same against Tristan. Now, I was going to do Demon King Zeldris, but I'm not going to do that because that's more Tristan fighting the Demon King and not Zeldris himself, so I'm just omitting that from this list, and that could be its own video down the road. Now, to cap off this video, let's talk about Estarossa, or Mael. Let's just talk about Mael in his Estarossa form. He is incredibly strong as Estarossa, able to go toe-to-toe with Escanor, but only was able to lose due to Escanor getting closer and closer to High Noon and getting the form of the One. He has a variety of abilities. He has a version of full counter that allows him to reflect physical blows double back to the opponent. He has Hellblaze, just the same thing as Zeldris's, which he probably won't really use against Tristan due to Tristan also knowing a full counter. He's got Rebellion, which is just 7 black swords that he just materializes out of thin air, each with a distinct form. There's Blackout, which just engulfs his target in darkness. Tristan can most likely break out of that with his goddess powers. Killing Saucer, Blades of just pure darkness, that rotate around his hand at high speeds, which can just be used to slice up his opponents. Now, without the commandment, Estarossa would actually have the upper hand on Tristan in terms of close quarters combat. Even if Tristan uses his Demon Mark to increase his physical strength, Estarossa could just knock back the physical blows right back at him with double the strength. So that would really injure Tristan. And let's just come to terms with the fact that during the Holy War arc, it was stated by, I believe, Chandler or Cusack that Estarossa was physically stronger than Zeldris at that point. And that's before he absorbs the other commandments, and I'll get into that as well. Honestly, Estarossa has a variety of abilities that could actually really deal Tristan some damage, And honestly, I think Rebellion combining with full counter and even blackout could be a really good combination to knock Tristan back and even mortally damage him or even kill him potentially. The commandment of love that he has essentially makes it so that anyone that stands before him with hatred in their hearts will be rendered powerless to harm or inflict damage to anyone else. Now Tristan, he can succumb to his emotions, and in his demon mark form, his negative emotions like anger will come to the surface, especially if he is like pissed off or annoyed. So that would be an easy way for the commandment of love to just completely make him unable to fight. If he's in his demon mark form, he can't control his emotions. Any form of hatred will end up shutting down his body, so Estarossa can take him down instantly. So yeah, in that instance, Estarossa, in base, before absorbing any of the other commandments, would honestly be able to win. But there's one more form to Estarossa, which is, well, his Nephilim state. His Nephilim state is roughly the same as his demon mark state, but he has goddess powers as well, along with the fact that he has the commandments of truth and repentance and even purity with him. So Tristan would have to deal with 4 commandments at the exact same time. And instead of like making the commandments conditions in effect, he can literally turn them into weapons. So he can use the truth commandment as a bell to disperse illusions. He can use repentance to turn into a blade that he can use to slice people and seal off their magical powers. And purity, he can use it as a giant, like a big sensor which releases smoke that makes people immobilized by just a sheer amount of pressure and suffer great hallucinations that their hearts truly desire. All that combined, and he's in a more berserker state in that point, so that is a lot to take in. Estarossa is probably the one commandment that really, and I mean really, has the biggest chance of taking down Tristan easily. Zeldris and Estarossa are the 2 obvious candidates in this list that will take down Tristan without much trouble. Tristan could potentially get the upper hand if he somehow mixes his demon and goddess powers, which has not been a thing in the series yet, and that's, I think, where his characters are going. But right now, Tristan at this point in time, I don't think he can beat Zeldris or Estarossa pre the commandment absorption. The commandment absorption would just, Tristan would not be able to win whatsoever. Full counter could potentially work against the magical attacks that he could use, which is a combination of goddess and demon powers, but other than that, Tristan would just be too underpowered to take down Estarossa. You'd have to be as strong as Zeldris, or even King at that point, to even hope to take him down. But yeah, that's all 10 commandments in one-on-one fights against Tristan. Now, if we decided to do all 10 commandments fighting Tristan all at once, Tristan would lose flat out. Let's just be honest. Tristan would definitely lose if he fought all 10 at once. All the different abilities, Tristan would not be able to handle them. Meliodas wasn't even able to like fully take on like 8 of the commandments until Estarossa showed up. He was going to wipe them out with revenge counter. That was his plan when he realized he couldn't just outright brute force his way through it. So he was going to use revenge counter, which was nullified by Estarossa's commandment of love. And then Estarossa kills Meliodas in that instance. So that would be a repeat of Meliodas versus the 10 Commandments, most likely just Gallant and Estarossa would be there from the start. There'd be no contest. I would have loved to just say, yeah, Tristan stomps through all 10 commandments, no issues whatsoever. This video would have been 10 minutes long. But with everything we know about all these commandments, their powers, the specific commandments that they have, various situations can cause Tristan to lose or have a very big disadvantage in a fight. And fighting them all at once would just be completely unfair and it's just a sheer slaughter. But yeah, that was Tristan versus the 10 Commandments. I wanted this to just be 20 minutes, but this ended up being close to 30 right now, so I'm sorry. This was a very ambitious video for me to do. I do want to do more videos like this in the future, so let me know if you like them. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below on who you would like me to do a versus video of next. It doesn't even have to be 7 Deadly Sins or 4 Nights related. It can be any anime or manga that you want, as long as I've actually read them. So let me know in the comment section down below. And also don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell if you haven't already for updates on future videos for this help. I cover 4 Nights weekly whenever the chapter is released, and I do more discussion-based videos for 4 Nights. This is new for me, so I hope you guys enjoyed. And I hope you all have an awesome day.